Well, the name of the book is Hollywood the Band, A Tale of Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. And the author, Stephen Jordan Brooks, is with us here on Author's Corner to talk about this book. His history, look at that, the cover, I love the cover. His history is amazing, and he is the person to write this book because he can pull back that curtain. He knows, he lived it, and it's fascinating the way that he's laid this out. Stephen, thanks so much for hanging with us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
So tell me why you wrote, or all of us, what made you decide you were going to write the book?
I had a couple of reasons. It was a labor of love, but a cathartic thing for me to write it. I thought it was a really good story to tell, and I had two purposes in writing the book. One was to explain the workings, the mechanics of the music industry, including all the pitfalls that can happen, but to explain all the different parts of it. There's managers, there's agents, there's producers, there's production companies. I wanted to explain how that all worked. And in that, explain what it really takes to be a successful rock band. All the pieces that have to come together with good music, of course, perhaps a good producer to put it together, good choreography, good looks, good everything else. A band that can really perform on stage like the best of them. But I also wanted to create a timepiece of the 70s with characters that reflected the 70s. And those characters include a women's libber, a black activist, a gay character coming out, a junkie from New York, a Vietnam vet, a hippie political activist, and all these characters, because I didn't want to create cardboard characters that just, yeah, let's get stoned, dude, and we'll have a fun time. This is really, I have all their backstories about who they are and what makes them tick. And so that created a little more of an interest to me as to who these characters really were.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I'd be remiss not to jump in here and say this, because I introed you this way. It makes total sense why you wrote this book and how you really flushed out the characters so we could feel them, see them, and get a good representation of the times. And when we had our conversation off the air, it's interesting, you were talking about the fact that you were in a band, and then you were also in the career. So before we dive even more into the book, tell everybody about your background.
Okay, my background began very young. I started playing music when I was like 10. I played woodwinds, flute, clarinet, sax. I had classically trained, music lessons, the whole thing. Even thought of having that my major in college. And then towards the end of high school, got with some friends and we started a rock band. Well, that morphed. I still continued going to college, but that morphed into a other rock band, and I was playing 6 nights a week, 6 sets a night in local nightclubs and stuff. A working band. I mean, it was better than doing a day job. So, I had my school and I had my rock band going on. And that lasted for a while. And of course, rock bands come and they go, and we fell apart. And I was in a whole bunch of different bands for a long time, all kind of bands. I was even in a black band for a while, doing like Tower Power stuff. But then I went to the dark side, as I call it. I went to the business side, and I started working for managers and producers. I started with one manager who was Cat Stevens' manager. I worked in his office, and we handled a bunch of other people, both radio, television, and music. And then there was a record producer there who was a client, and he wanted to open an office, so he asked me to be his assistant, to open the office, to be his, instead of paying the manager, he would pay me a salary and I have a bunch other office things to do. But he was from Abbey Road Studios in London. He had engineered Elton John, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones. The first artist he produced was David Bowie.
Wow.
And so he had quite a resume, shall we say. He'd done Supertramp, he'd done a bunch of people. Anyway, he came, we opened an office, and I was there with him. In that office, it was production office. So I worked with, and they were doing the production stuff. We worked with Devo, Jeff Beck, Supertramp, Kansas, a bunch of jazz artists like Stanley Clarke and Billy Cobham, and just a whole bunch of different artists. And eventually, we were given the opportunity by Frank Zappa, who brought us some members of his band because they were friends. They used to live near each other. They were friends, and he brought in this band, which became Missing Persons.
Wow.
And so we decided to produce Missing Persons. We produced four songs for them to try and shop and get a record deal. And eventually we managed them. It was a management team. It was me and the record producer. We managed Missing Persons for a long time. So that was our major management endeavor. And so that went from there. So it's a little bit of everything. I've done the business. I've done the business. I've done the, I've done the tours. I've done this, and I've sat in the office, working with big record company executives and stuff. So it was an interesting life. And as I look back, I go like, wow, that was pretty wild.
And you poured into the book. That's why I say you were so the right person to write this. So tell us more about the book. We're not going to tell everybody everything. They can get it for a song on Amazon, Kindle. You can get a hardback if you like it that way. You can get it soft, whatever kind of book you prefer to read. And
Right.
It'll just pull you right in. It's the perfect read, plane, beach, anywhere actually. And you can pick it up anywhere at any point in the book. That's what I like. It's the way that you've written it.
Yeah, the book has the book is about 95% fact. Now, that being said, it's not all things that happened to me, but it's things that throughout the business I picked up. They may have happened to another group, another rock band, and some of them pretty major. Some of the things that the band does, the bad things the band does, other artists have done. And I wanted to point that out in the book, that this is, don't do this and don't do that. The band makes all the mistakes. So I wanted to be kind of instructive as to be careful. Be careful out there. It's a jungle, and trust me, it's a jungle. So there's a lot of scenarios that happen in the book. In fact, it's interesting that some of the things I wrote about, when the reviewers reviewed it, they thought, well, this is over the top. This would never happen. And the ones they picked out were the ones that really did happen. Happened to me. I'm going like, well, wait a minute. I was there. I did that. So I wanted that, but I didn't want to create a cardboard, rock and roll band. I wanted to create real characters that reflected the time period, that really had backstories and really had, you knew who the characters were. I was an English teacher after that, and one of the things I would tell my kids: don't tell, show. I wanted to show who these characters were, not just tell, well, he's a hippie and he does this. That's boring. I'm bored. I wanted to, through dialogue, through action, through situations, bring these characters to life in a real setting, in a real situation. And so they come together. The first part of the book is the band forming with all the pieces and all the personnel involved. And the second half is really about the music industry and all of the things that they go through in getting record deal and getting it signed, and all the hoops they have to jump through, and all the lessons they have to learn. And they have to learn a lot of lessons. They make a lot of mistakes, as most bands do. I used to see bands all the time. And I was a pretty good critic because that's what I did. Right. So I could go in there and say, well, you need this or you need that, or the wrong song, or whatever it is. You have a good this, but you need more of this. You need a good hit single. So this band had to kind of combine it all and had to put the right personnel. It's not just having a great band. You need all of the pieces and all the personnel involved to make it a great band. The record producer, the agent, the manager, the whatever. All those pieces are what make a great band. So
for you, it had to be fun to be able to take the knowledge that you have and, as I said in the beginning, really just weave this in all different directions to give us the real scoop on what it's like. It's not what people think. They think, oh, they're handsome, she's attractive, or they throw them together and boof, here we go, platinum, gold records. It's not that easy.
Yeah, those overnight hits, those overnight. Well, they just kind of those overnight hits usually have been working around town for years. I used to see the same bands over and over and over again when I was in the business, and I would go to nightclubs all the time, scouting groups or groups that wanted us to work with them, and I saw them all, and some of them eventually made it. Some of them I was right on. Some of them I said they're going to make it. I'll never forget going to see Van Halen at a nightclub, and I walked in and I go like, oh my God, this band is going to make it. That's one of those things that you see and just kind of know instinctively someone's going to pick them. And of course they did, and now they're big stars.
Yeah.
But other groups like that, and some of them made it. Some of them took forever. Some of them, and I have more than my share of records that are shelved somewhere at Warner Brothers or A&M or Columbia that never saw the light of day. So, just because you get a record doesn't mean you're going to be big time either. It takes, after that, it takes the promotion team and the advertising team and all that. And then it just, the public can be fickle. They might like it, they might not like it.
Yeah.
But these one-hit wonders, these overnight successes, very rarely do they happen.
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon, you will see a corporate put-together band. In other words, Columbia Records or somebody will come and say, we want you, and you, and you, and you to start a band, and we'll see how it goes. Now, that sometimes works, but sometimes you're dealing with all kinds of personalities.
Right.
That's happening more and more in the business now. They're putting together
bands,
that hit bands and hit things. That didn't happen as much back then. Back then it was do the nightclub circuit and play all over town, and try and get your record deal.
In the title, you say Hollywood the Band, a tale of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. How bad were the drugs? Because hey, it was the 70s.
The drugs were all over the place. And in my band, in the band I played in, my manager was one of the Southern California's largest drug dealers. He used to buy, major quantities of drugs. He was well known. He was buying drugs from two sources mostly. He was buying drugs from the mafia. His father was mafia. His father wasn't a drug dealer, but I don't know what his father was dealing in. But he had a big mansion in Palos Verdes, and he owned a car repair garage. Well, you don't get a mansion by having a car repair garage.
Right.
And we would rehearse there. And all of a sudden, a big shipment would come in, a big shipment would go out, and it's like, okay, whatever's coming in and out of here is certainly contraband. Anyway, that was one of his big sources. His other big source was he was a Vietnam vet. And the CEO he had in Vietnam became a big DEA executive, a big DEA person. So he was buying drugs from the DEA. I would sit there and talk to him, and they would see on the news, 100 pounds of, marijuana confiscated, or cocaine, or whatever it was. And he would say, yeah, I got the other 100 pounds. He'd fly out to the middle of the desert, some landing strip, I don't know where, I never went with that. And they'd pick up drugs and fly him back.
Wow.
So major drugs. And the band, one of the lessons the band has to learn is that there's a time and a place for drugs. Because they want to be a party band, they want to, get high all the time and do this. And there's a series of situations that happen to the band. And the manager finally says, look, if you want to just go and party, go and party. But I'm not going to manage a band that just wants to party. This is serious business. This is work. This is a job. You need to go up there and sound great every time. And so they had to curtail their drug use until after, the gigs most of the time. But yeah, that was the thing. There's a scene in one of the things where they go to a big Hollywood party up in the Hollywood Hills with a manager, and there was coffee cans filled with cocaine. Just lay it out on the glass table and take as much lines as you want. And I was there. This wasn't like made up. I was there. And so drug use was very, very common. But drug use can also ruin a lot of careers.
Yeah.
That's the shame about it. I mean, some of the big artists nowadays, they had to get clean and sober in order to do some of their best work. Aerosmith and Rolling Stones, they cleaned their act up and they're better than ever. But, they went through their druggy times and weren't always so great. I never forget seeing an artist once, a major artist, and he came out and was starting to play and he couldn't stand up.
Oh.
Well, they brought out a stool. He kept falling off the stool. They brought out an armchair. He fell out of the armchair. And I paid money to see this artist.
Right.
And normally this artist is really good. But that night, he was just too stoned out of his mind to be going on stage. It still is a job. It still is a career and something that to be taken seriously.
Yeah. When people read your book, Stephen, what do you hope they take away?
I hope they take away a sense of time. I hope they take away a sense of history. I hope they take away a sense of the workings of the industry and what it really is like to be on the inside, what it really takes for a band to make it big, all the component parts. And, I almost wrote it for that band, that little band that's trying to make it, that's working out in nightclubs. Because this is what happens. This is how we do this, and this is how we do that. So it's kind of almost instructive in that sense that this is what we need to do.
I love it.
But even for people who don't want, there's a sense everybody wants to be a rock star.
Oh yeah.
And so this is what it takes to be a rock star.
Right. And that's the title is just so brilliant. Hollywood the Band: A Tale of Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. Pick it up and get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's wonderful.
It has it all.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.